I gave my twin sister my kidney. She repaid me by stealing my life. My name is Maya, and I need to tell you what happened to me over the last 2 years, because I still don't think anyone would believe it if I hadn't lived through it myself. I am an identical twin. My sister's name is Dana. For 30 years, we shared a face, a birthday, and a set of parents who never quite figured out how to treat us like two separate people. What I did not know, until it was almost too late, was that Dana had spent those 30 years quietly cataloging every way my life was better than hers. Not louder, not more talented, just better in the small ways that add up. I did not see it coming, because I loved her the way you love someone you've never lived a single day without. Growing up, people called us the twins more often than they called us by our names, and Dana hated it more than I did. I never minded blending together with her. She minded constantly. I got better grades without trying much. She got trophies for effort our mother, Carol, made a point of praising loudly, as if repetition could turn hard work into achievement. I fell into a stable job in operations at a mid-sized logistics firm, working under a manager named Mr. Whitfield who trusted me with more responsibility every year. Dana drifted between jobs, always convinced the last one hadn't recognized her potential. I met Ryan in my late 20s. He was steady and funny and never made me feel like I was competing with anyone, including my own sister. Dana never found anyone who stayed. People who aren't twins tend to assume identical siblings experience the world identically, as though sharing a face means sharing an inner life. Nothing could be further from the truth. Dana and I processed the same childhood in almost opposite ways. Where I learned to be quietly self-sufficient, she learned to perform whatever version of herself seemed most likely to earn attention in a house that never had quite enough to go around. She was a genuinely warm person in many ways, generous with compliments, quick to make people laugh, the kind of person strangers liked instantly. But underneath that warmth was a keeping of score I didn't fully register until it was far too late to protect myself from it. Every promotion I got, every relationship that worked, every small ordinary success, went into some private ledger she never let me see. I want to be clear that I never treated my life as something Dana wasn't allowed to want. I invited her into it constantly. She had dinner with Ryan and me most Sundays. She had a key to my apartment for the years she was between leases. My best friend, Jenna, treated Dana like a second friend by default, the way people do with twins. I thought I was being generous. Looking back, I think I was handing Dana a very detailed map of exactly what she was missing and exactly how to take it, one small piece at a time, without me ever noticing the theft in progress. There was a specific memory I kept returning to once I understood what Dana was capable of from when we were 19. I had won a small scholarship for an essay competition at our community college, nothing enormous, but enough to cover a semester of books. Dana had submitted an essay to the same competition and lost. For weeks afterward, she told mutual friends a slightly altered version of events, one where the judges had mixed up our submissions, where she'd actually written the stronger essay and I had simply been credited by mistake. I laughed it off at the time, assuming it was a joke born of sibling rivalry. I understand now that it wasn't a joke. It was a rehearsal for a much larger claim she would eventually make on my entire life, and I had missed every early warning sign because I loved her too much to look for them. Our father left when we were 12, and Carol raised us largely alone, working long shifts as a hospital administrator, exhausted in ways that left little room for the kind of even-handed parenting people describe in theory. I have wondered since whether Carol's habit of praising Dana's efforts so loudly, so constantly, was less about lifting Dana up and more about managing her own guilt over a household that never quite had enough attention to go around evenly. Whatever the reason, the pattern set early and never really broke. I got quiet approval for being capable. Dana got loud, compensatory encouragement for trying, and somewhere in that imbalance, she built a belief that the world owed her a version of my life, because mine had apparently come easier. The diagnosis came on an ordinary Tuesday. Dana called me crying, which was rare enough that I panicked before she even explained. Her kidneys were failing, a condition that had apparently been building quietly for years, undetected until a routine checkup turned into an emergency referral. The doctors explained that dialysis could keep her alive, but a transplant was her best chance at anything resembling a normal life. Because we were identical twins, I was tested first, out of pure logic. The match was as close to perfect as medicine gets. I remember sitting in the transplant coordinator's office, listening to her explain the risks to me, and thinking that there was no version of this where I said no. Dana was my sister. This was simply what you did. The weeks of testing before the surgery were their own kind of ordeal, full of blood draws and imaging and long waits in sterile hallways with Dana, who alternated between gratitude so intense it embarrassed me and estranged. Brittle silence I didn't examine closely enough at the time. Once, in the hospital cafeteria, she told me quietly that she didn't know how she'd ever repay me, that it felt wrong for me to give her something so enormous when she'd spent so much of our lives being compared to me and coming up short. I told her there was nothing to repay, that this was what family did. I meant it completely. I did not yet understand that Dana had a very different definition of repayment forming beneath the gratitude, one that had nothing to do with kindness and everything to do with balance, restored on her own terms. Ryan supported the decision, though I could tell he was frightened for me in a way he tried to hide. Carol wept with relief and told everyone who would listen that her daughters had always been close, closer than most sisters, proof that we belonged together. Nobody asked Dana how she felt about needing to be saved by the sister she'd spent a lifetime measuring herself against. I didn't ask either. I assumed gratitude. I assumed this would be the thing that finally settled something between us, some old debt of comparison, paid off for good. I had no idea I was about to hand her the one thing she'd wanted longer than she'd wanted a kidney. A reason to become me. The surgery happened on a gray morning in March. I remember almost nothing after the anesthesia except waking up in a recovery room with a pain low in my side that felt like a fist had replaced an organ. Dana's surgery went well. Mine went fine too, though donor recovery is its own quiet ordeal that nobody warns you about. I was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. My body had given something up, and it wanted time to grieve that before it would let me feel normal again. Ryan took 2 weeks off work to care for me. Dana recovered in a different wing of the same hospital. Already, I would later learn, telling nurses and visitors how strong she felt, how ready she was to finally live. The first few weeks home were slow. I could barely climb the stairs to my own apartment without resting halfway. Mr. Whitfield told me to take all the time I needed, and Dana, freshly discharged and radiant with borrowed health, offered to cover a few of my shifts so I wouldn't fall behind. I thought it was thoughtful. I thought it was the least she could do, and I was grateful she wanted to do it. What I did not understand yet was that Dana walking into my workplace, using my badge, answering to my name because half the staff already mixed us up anyway, was not a favor. It was a rehearsal. I spent most of April in bed or on the couch, watching my energy return in small, frustrating increments. Dana visited often, always cheerful, always full of updates about how well things were going at our job, how Mr. Whitfield had complimented her work, how a few coworkers had said I seemed different since the surgery, sharper, more confident. I laughed it off. I told her that sounded like her, not me. She smiled in a way I mistook for warmth. She said maybe the surgery had changed us both a little. I didn't think much of it. I had just given away a kidney. I wasn't exactly running at full capacity for suspicion. There was a particular Thursday in late April that I only fully understood months later. Dana had gone into my office wearing a blazer she'd borrowed from my closet, something she'd started doing under the excuse that our styles overlapped anyway, and it saved her a trip to buy new clothes. She sat through a project review with Mr. Whitfield, answering questions about a client account I had actually built from scratch over 2 years. Improvising details convincingly enough that nobody in the room questioned whether the version of me sitting there was actually me. She told me about it that evening with a kind of pride, as though she'd done something impressive rather than something deeply strange, and I remember thanking her, actually thanking her, for handling something I assumed I simply didn't have the energy to recall attending myself. My aunt overseas called during that same stretch, thrilled to catch me in a rare moment of availability, gushing about how well I sounded, how much stronger my voice seemed compared to the last time we'd spoken before the surgery. I had no memory of the call at all. When I mentioned it to Dana, confused, she said she'd taken the call for me because I'd been asleep and didn't want to worry our aunt by having her think I was too unwell to talk. It sounded, on its surface, like consideration. It was only much later, gathering the full timeline, that I understood Dana had spoken to my aunt for nearly 40 minutes, in my voice, about my life, without me ever knowing the conversation had taken place. By May, small things started to feel off in a way I couldn't name yet. Jenna mentioned she'd run into me at a coffee shop I hadn't visited that week, laughing about how distracted I'd seemed. I told her that wasn't me. She waved it off, said maybe I forgot, brains do strange things after surgery. Ryan mentioned a dinner reservation I didn't remember making, at a restaurant I didn't remember choosing. When I asked him about it, he looked at me strangely and said I was the one who suggested it, over text, the week before. I checked my messages. I found a text I didn't recall sending, in a tone that was almost mine, but not quite. Slightly too eager. Slightly too polished. I told myself I was still healing, that my memory was foggy from the anesthesia and the exhaustion, and that it was easier to doubt myself than to consider what I was actually looking at. Dana, meanwhile, had fully recovered and fully rebranded herself as the sister who'd been through something transformative. She started showing up more at the places I used to go alone, always with an easy explanation, always folding herself so naturally into my routines that nobody around us thought to question it. Twins confusing people wasn't new. What was new was that Dana had stopped correcting the confusion. She had started encouraging it. June was the month the ground really started shifting beneath me, though I didn't have the full picture yet. Mr. Whitfield pulled me aside at work and said, gently, that he'd noticed I seemed a bit inconsistent lately, missing details on projects I usually handled flawlessly. I had no memory of most of what he described. I told him I'd been out recovering from surgery for most of that stretch, and he looked confused, said he'd seen me in the office multiple times that month. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Dana had been covering my shifts. But covering, I was starting to realize, might have meant something closer to replacing. I brought it up to Dana directly, as gently as I could, because some part of me still didn't want to believe what I was circling. I asked if she'd been going into the office more than she'd mentioned, using my badge, answering as me. She didn't deny it outright. She said it had been easier that way, that people got confused regardless, that she was just trying to help me keep my job afloat while I recovered. She said it like it was obviously reasonable, like I should be thanking her instead of asking questions. I remember feeling strange, unable to locate exactly what was wrong with an explanation that sounded so generous on its surface. Ryan started acting differently around the same time, though it took me longer to notice because I trusted him completely. He'd mentioned conversations we'd apparently had that I had no memory of. He'd reference plans, inside jokes, small tender moments that felt entirely unfamiliar to me. When I pushed back, confused, he'd get a look on his face like I was the one being strange, like I was pulling away from him for no reason he could understand. I started to wonder if the anesthesia had done something to my memory after all, some gap in recall the doctors hadn't warned me about. It felt safer to doubt my own mind than to doubt the two people I loved most. Looking back, I can see how carefully Dana calibrated each small deception so that none of them, on their own, seemed worth a real confrontation. She never claimed anything I could disprove outright in a single conversation. She simply left small inconsistencies scattered across weeks, a misremembered dinner here, a strange comment from a coworker there, until I was too busy doubting my own healing brain to notice the pattern connecting them. I started keeping a private note on my phone, quietly, almost embarrassed by my own suspicion, listing every moment that didn't add up. I didn't show it to anyone. I told myself I was being paranoid, that surgery and exhaustion could easily explain gaps in memory, and that accusing my own sister, who had just watched me go under anesthesia to save her life, of something as strange as impersonation, would make me sound unwell rather than observant. Jenna noticed something was different in me before I was ready to name it myself. She said I seemed distracted during our calls, distant in a way that wasn't like me, and asked more than once if the surgery had taken more out of me than I was admitting. I told her I was just tired. What I didn't tell her was that I had started to feel like a stranger inside my own routines, unsure some days whether a memory belonged to me or had simply been described to. So convincingly, by Ryan or Carol or Dana herself, that I had absorbed it as my own. That particular kind of confusion is hard to explain to someone who hasn't lived through it. It doesn't feel like being lied to. It feels like slowly losing the ability to trust your own mind. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from constantly auditing your own memory, checking and rechecking whether something actually happened the way you recall it, and it is a different exhaustion entirely from physical recovery. My body was healing steadily by June, the surgical fatigue lifting in small increments the way the doctors had promised it would. My mind, meanwhile, felt less stable.